Welcome to the Thoughtcast. This is the in-depth section of the In Response podcast where handsome guys chat about exclusive topics with outstanding guests of the field. This show is brought to you by greatness at anycost.com and Austrian-legacy.com. You can support this show at patreon.com/response_legacy. Now lean back and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the second edition of Thoughtcast, which is a subsystem of In Response, a legacy podcast, where we talk in depth about specific topic with an experienced guest of the field. This time it's my pleasure to run the show. I'm Peter Plank, and today I'm joined with another painter enthusiast, and this one is Callum Smith.
Hello everyone, hello. Thank you for having me. Painter enthusiast indeed, and I got to say I love the name of the podcast, Thoughtcast. Great card, artifacts are great. It's just cool to talk about it.
Yeah, so we are joined. We will talk about some basic concepts. How does Painter work? What are Painter decks? Is Painter deck? Is Painter a deck, or is Painter a whole archetype? What are some engine cards? What are some matchups? What are some cool new cards? And then in the end, we will talk about how to play Painter. So,
first of all, I have to say there's one mistake. It's not a deck, it's not an archetype, it's a lifestyle.
That's completely true. If you're once hooked with it, it's just an insane deck or insane card combination to play. So, Callum, do you want to start with how does Painter work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Painter has been a deck in Legacy for an incredibly long time. I think since Shadow More came out. I got to say, personally, I've always loved the deck, but I've not been a player of it for very long, just a couple of years really. I've really started diving into it the last few years and just love it. So basically, Painter is a 2-mana artifact. It's a scarecrow, so it's a cool creature, that matters. And it's a 1/3, and when it comes to play, you choose a color, and then every card is that color. So that means every card in each player's hands, in their deck, in play. And this combos with Grindstone. A Grindstone is an artifact from Tempest. It costs 1 mana to play, and you can tap it and pay 3 mana to activate it. And it says target player mills 2 cards. And then if those 2 cards share a color, then you repeat this process. So the combo is Painter turns every single card in both players' decks the same color. And so you usually name blue, but you can name all different colors. There's loads of niche, cool situations where you name different things. It doesn't matter which one you actually name for the combo, and then they will mill their whole deck, because every time they mill 2, they'll share a color, and then you'll repeat the process. So you mill the whole deck out, essentially.
So, in short, it's an artifact combo mill deck.
Yeah.
Which is it's for Legacy standards, it's an A+B combo deck, which means, like show and tell, you need 1 card and another card, which is in this case Painter plus Grindstone. And
the nice thing with it is it costs like 6 mana, but split across a really nice place on your curve. So you can play turn 1 Grindstone, turn 2 Painter, turn 3 activate Grindstone, essentially. And because they're colorless as well, you get to use soul lands very efficiently, producing extra mana. So there's really like tons of ways to abuse it and build it and stuff. So this is why it's like kind of been a mainstay for a long time, because there is like, there's removal for the Painter or the Grindstone, but at its heart, it's kind of stayed a very strong combo through the years, I think, just because it's quite cheap.
Yeah, it's a quite cheap combo. You can play it low to the ground, and for that it's a fan favorite, I would say, for the whole existence of the deck. Even though some, I would call it dirty blue decks got some cool cards banned for the deck, like, how was it called? Senses Divining Top.
Senses Divining Top. Yeah, you could do some cool Goblin Welder tricks with that. You would tap it to draw a card and then weld the top out in response and stuff like that. Painter's fan favorite for sure, because it's always been a deck which has been like, in the past it was pretty much a tier 1 deck. There was like blue-red versions as well that were like countertop ones that played intuition and stuff, but it's never been oppressive. It's never been frustrating to play with. It is, you can play removal spells like Lightning Bolt and Source Splashes on the Painter. It's easy in a sense to interact with, and it just has like a really interesting and unusual play style and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I'd struggle to meet anyone that doesn't like Painter. Honestly, it's just such a cool way of playing the game.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the combo has some clear weaknesses. For example, with Null Rod, which was back in the days a really, really hard card to deal with. Like we got now Prismatic Ending, which is a clean answer if you're playing the white versions of the deck. But yeah, we have some clear weaknesses, and and it's
sometimes your opponent's Amenium puts an Emrakul in their deck, and then you can't mill them out. So you'd have to like go through the lengths of getting like a Tormod's Crypt and crypting them in response to the Emrakul trigger and stuff. And so yeah, there is a lot of like interesting, weird things as well where it's kind of bad against. So, and recently Endurance has come along where they can cast an Endurance after you've activated Grindstone to put their graveyard in their library again. So there's plenty of counterplay. That's what makes it so cool.
Yeah, exactly. This card was again a hard hit for the deck, but in the same set we got another card we will talk about later, which is Urza Saga, which basically puts the deck, I would say, into tier 1.5 or tier 2 for sure. Again,
yeah, probably. I think the top of tier 2. It's around there.
Yeah, and I think this is a good place for the deck. So, but we talked about Painter the deck, but what is Painter the deck? We have some few archetypes within Painter, I would say. We have for sure the Stompy playstyle Painter decks, and for example, we have the combo Painter decks and a small subsection, which are the value decks. But the most played archetype, I would say, are the Stompy Shells, and the front runners in the shell is Shortcake, so Strawberry Shortcake, which is the red-white shell using Enlightened Tutor, and was previously playing Senses Divining Top. And the other pretty big player in Painter is the Imperial Red Painter decks, which are playing the 4th Imperial Recruiter, which is a mainstay within Painter, but this version specifically is playing a mono-red version with Blood Moon and stuff like that.
Yeah, these two have been like the as you say, the mainstays over the years. There's always been different splashes and different approaches. Like before Urza Saga came along, Imperial was also like a 4 Blood Moon, 1 to 3 Megas of the Moon kind of deck, and it used back in the day it used to play like 4 Simian Spirit Guides as well, a lot of fast mana, and you were like essentially a Blood Moon Stompy deck, which would kill with the Painter side of things, because you just had like a lot of synergy with red fast mana as well and stuff. And yeah, Enlightened Tutor's seen like a funny fall from grace. It's still played as a one-off sometimes, but I don't know, Card Advance is just so bad these days.
Yeah.
For me personally, I've been playing tons of Imperial. I'm approaching it from the sense of I love basic lands, and I think they're just incredibly powerful. So I don't know, I still like get wastelanded out of the game, even with like 8 or 9 basics in my deck, but sometimes 10. So I've always valued the basic lands, but I'm also treating it to be really, really sloppy and cheesy, like a journey. So I want to start with Imperial, and I want to try a lot of different styles now. So I've tried a Moonstompy version. I've like played Imperial Recruiters in all different numbers, with Khan, without Khan, all these different things. Now I'm about ready to start playing Shortcake. I'm gonna jump into that more, I think, next. And then there's just like tons of different versions. There's mono blue as well, and white, and all these things. So I'm taking my time going through it. But yeah, those two are the ones you see most over the years.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the versions that are playing for sure 4 to 6 soul lands. I think they are currently at 6. With
6 is 2 city and 4 tomb is pretty stock.
It's pretty stock. And now with the new card, which is Urza Saga, which is kind of a numbo with some moon effects, but the card on its own is just way too good to pass on in any Delver deck, in any Painter decks.
Oh, that's a bad slip there. Giving yourself away as a Delver player.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, as a Saga, do we want to talk about that now?
I think we kind of have to talk about it now, because it's just a really, really good card. It's a new card. It's from Modern Horizons 2. It's an land enchantment, which is a saga in the name. And it has basically the 3 chapters. The chapter 1 says that it taps for a colorless, which is a kind of drawback for a land most of the time, but in Painter you are using the colorless mana to cast some cards like Grindstone or Painter itself and stuff like that. On the other side, the second chapter says that it gains the ability to tap. You have to use 2 colorless mana and 2 generic mana and tap it to produce an basically XX creature token, and X is the amount of artifacts you control. And the third chapter tutors a 1-drop or an artifact with exactly CMC 0 or CMC 1 in its mana cost. So you can't get an artifact land because it has nothing in the mana cost, but you can get something like a Mox Opal or the Grindstone, which is a huge pump for the deck, because back in the days you had the Imperial Recruiter to total up your Painters, which is like 8 Painters you can play, but you didn't had the tutor for the Grindstone except for the previously mentioned Enlightened Tutor. So it is a huge pump because the deck got way more consistent. You have some mana that you can use for it and another angle of attack with the tokens.
Absolutely. It kind of revolutionized the deck, right? So, as you say, it is a number with Blood Moon. So if anyone's not clear, when there's a Saga in play and then you play a Blood Moon, the Saga just instantly goes to the graveyard because it loses its abilities and it's not a Saga anymore. So it doesn't matter which one came first. If you play a Blood Moon and there's a Saga in play, it dies. Or if you play a Saga while Blood Moon's in play, it just goes to the graveyard immediately. So the deck kind of rebuilt itself, right? So it cut the Blood Moons. And I think Blood Moon is very powerful in the format right now. Delver started playing some basic islands, but they weren't for a long time, so they couldn't cast their Murktides. And the control or mid-range decks are like playing 10 colors and casting arrows and stuff. So it's very effective against them. But Saga's it's just incredible what it does. So first of all, the threat of the tokens is legit. Before Dress Down got played even more, it was just like you could play a Saga against control and they wouldn't know what to do. You make a construct, you make a second construct, and then if you played a second Saga, they're just like, oh my god, they keep coming. And a lot of decks, Painter, I haven't liked it myself, but a lot of decks play the Retrofitter Founder as well to keep pumping out tokens after. I do think the most important thing is just an uncounterable and consistent way to find Grindstone, though. I found myself at the beginning of playing Saga, I was making loads of constructs, but I found myself actually thinking it's a little bit of a trap. Like, you do that in some matchups, but if they deal with them, it's a tempo swing, you lost the constructs, and then you end up trying to win with the combo after they've dealt with your board presence, and then you're like halfway between, do I win with the combo or pressure? So I very often just like make one construct, and then if the opponent looks like they're in a position to deal with it, I'll be probably floating mana and casting spells the next turn. Where it also has become huge is against like opposing Chalice decks. So Painter's been like an artifact deck that just hates Chalice decks. It's usually not this way around. It's quite funny. And I've always thought like Chalice and Goblin Welder, there's got to be some shell with them somewhere together, but it never works. But Painter, almost all the versions are low to the ground with lots of 1-drops. Yep. And so if you're facing a Chalice and then you don't have a Goblin Welder in play, you're not going to get a Grindstone out, so you were kind of locked out. But now, Painter Servant, as a Saga, you could fetch the Grindstone under the Chalice. And this has come up a lot, actually. It's a ton against 8 cast and the Moon Stompy. It also gives just like a really easy goldfish of turn 1 Saga, turn 2 Painter, and then turn 3 you're threatening a kill, just with those 2 cards. You do need a second land, but that's it. So there are a lot of combo matchups where you do just need to goldfish, and this curve is amazing. I guess it's similar to the Grindstone, but then you need a third land if you're just casting the Grindstone turn 3. It's powerful. And it just like finds bullets as well. So you can have a Pithing Needle to stop opposing Planeswalkers or Thespian stage strategies and stuff like that. You can get a Soul Guide Lantern to stop graveyard things. And these things are really good as well with all the welders and stuff. Like you have more things to weld in and out, especially Soul Guide Lantern or Tormund's Crypt. You really, really abuse them against graveyard strategies. Yeah, it's just one of those things where like it just does everything the deck wants. And it also allows you to play less Grindstones. I know you were saying you want more, you want the tutors, but I've gone down to 2 Grindstones. At the beginning it was like 4, then 3, now 2 has been like the sweet spot I found. And often you have Khans and you have the third in the sideboard. because it's a really bad card to draw early if you don't have the Painter, or if you're not threatening a combo. It just does nothing. It's just an artifact in play. So you're getting to play less quote unquote bad cards, and it just really brings the deck together. So it's just a staple, and I would say catapulted the deck from like middle bottom of tier 2 to like proper top of tier 2, pushy into tier 1 at times. It's a really great deck thanks to Saga, basically.
Saga was just really, really good. It basically can provide you anything you want from the deck. I'm for example an huge sucker for Pirate Spellbomb, which is like a premium removal spell which can draw a card, which is huge in all of my builds. And as you said, Pithing Needle, Soul Guide Lantern, everything you can, everything you want. If you're playing black, you can play Nihil Spellbomb to draw you again some cards. And Saga can do anything for you. You can play, if the meta for your FNM is like basically really, really grindy and they're hard at answering them, you can get like an expedition map in there that you can 2-drop the second Saga, which is a tech that is mostly used in Modern, I would say. But
I love that.
But it's just a really, really grindy, good card, and it does go under the counter spells of your opponent, which is really, really great. Yeah. So as we previously said, the differences between Short Kick and Imperial is basically the White Splash. For cards like the Enlightened Tutor, and another big one is the Ethos one, Canonist, which is basically in there since forever, which is a main deck hate piece against Storm variants and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's the Enlightened Tutor. What it brings is just like, I agree, it's Canonist, and then it's also Blood Moon and Lion's Eye Diamond are the three things that, like, having access to those three things in whatever games is like, it really makes the difference between Imperial. So you are sacrificing your mana, like, Plateau is going to get Wasteland and stuff, but LED lets you combo faster, like by just sacking it for 3 mana to activate Grindstone. The Canonist, as you say, can be lights out against Storm decks. It's a really powerful tool to have in game 1s, because otherwise you're kind of dead to them. You just need to like combo them quickly and hope it works, but you're usually slower. And having access to Blood Moon, even in a Saga deck, I often sideboard 2 or 3 Blood Moons because they are so powerful in the good matchups that you're willing to have your Sagas be dead when you want the Blood Moon active. So Enlightened Tutor lets you play like a Blood Moon in the main deck, and so if you play against the 4 or 5 color control decks and just get to slam a Blood Moon, that's just going to win you the game. So it is definitely worth it.
Yeah, definitely true. And another thing is that the Enlightened Tutor is basically an additional copy of something like an Ensnaring Bridge 2 in the deck, which is like a mainstay as a one-off or sometimes a 2-off in those decks.
Sometimes you just got to get a Great Furnace as well.
Yeah, you can get the second land, or the third land to get the combo at the end of the turn with the Plateau to fetch up another land, which is sometimes needed. So let's move on to the next archetype, which is the combo variants. They are a lot more focused on getting to the combo and playing another game, because like Short Kick and Imperial Painter are a painter deck which want to win with the combo, but they have the element of the prison archetype with the Blood Moon and stuff like that. Or sometimes
you'll be surprised how grindy they are.
Yeah,
like if you've never played against them and you're playing a mid-range or a control deck, you'll be amazed how like they can play slow, they can play grindy.
Yeah.
They put a lot of 1/1s and 2/2s and stuff on the board. They have Khans very often. It really, really does grind, and so you'll be surprised.
That's true. That's something that I really, really like about Painter, that if the first combo doesn't work out, you aren't dead because you have some leftovers on the field. They can interact with some of them, but not all of them most of the time. So you have something that can deal with them in the later stages of the game.
And just wait until you have Goblin Welders welding out Nickel Wellspring.
Yeah, something like that. Back in the days.
That's my favorite.
Back in the days with another card that got banned for blue deck since Astrolabe. It was just, if you don't have the combo,
so nice in the deck.
You don't want to fetch up another combo piece. I was playing a 4-color control deck with Painter in that, and the first Goblin Engineer just got the second Astrolabe, and then you were just bouncing Astrolabes for the next 4 turns, drawing you 4 cards.
So nice.
And you just, grinded them into oblivion. And
God damn it, blue players. Imagine we had Astrolabe and top. It would have been so nice.
Painter would be where, yeah.
Saga fetching top or something, yeah.
Saga fetching top. Then we have more Velda effects. I mean, Oswald doesn't work
I think we'd actually... I think we'd just grow to hate Miracles with Urza Saga as their win con more than anything else.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's hope that... I mean, Regavan got banned so that Urza Saga doesn't get banned for Painter, so it's kind of good.
Yeah. I think it's safe. It's safe.
No, Saga is pretty safe in Legacy. We have Wasteland to deal with it, so I can't imagine that it will get banned in the next few years.
I adore the card because it's the biggest boost to non-blue I can remember. And it's incredible. It is like, you can see some players complain that it's a broken card, and it is like board view unbroken. It's so powerful what it does for its cost. It's like it's a land that goes and gets a permanent and makes 2 bodies. It's just incredible. But like I don't know, like we had the Ragavan decks that were like Sagavan or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And there are some blue decks that are playing it, but it's really hard to. You do need to commit to it. So I don't know. I think it's just genius design to introduce this card that blue decks are struggling to play themselves. And it's just such a shot in the arm to like. So obviously Painter we're talking about, but like lands and 8 casts and so many decks just love it, and blue decks struggle with it. So it's great to have in the format, I think.
Yeah, it has basically some text on it that says you kind of have to skip on cantripping the next 2 turns, which is a huge cost for blue decks, and for the other decks you kind of want to do something. And if a 2/2 or 3/3 or even a 1/1 construct is the best thing that you can do, it's something you can do with a land. And it does cost you some form of deck building restrictions, but it's a really, really good card that you can play with. And the package isn't that big. It's most of the time like 7 to 8 cards that you want to include in your deck, which are like the 4 lands or 3 lands, however you construct your deck. And a few forms of cards that you want to fetch up, like the previously mentioned Retrofitter Foundry, the Piffing Needle, and stuff like that. So it's a really, really good engine that can combat the force of countering spells from the blue side. And blue decks, we now talk about the combo decks in the Painter archetype, which is basically the blue-red version, which is currently, I think, the most played one. And there are still floating around rug versions, which are playing currently Euro and stuff like that. They are combo, but on the other side have some form of a mid-range engine that is completely different to the Stompy archetypes like Shortcake and Imperial. Some main cards in there are, they are playing blue, so they are playing Brainstorm, Ponder, Force of Will. And with that, you have a lot more consistency and can keep like thinner starting hands, I would say.
Yeah, so they're like, as you say, consistency is great, right? Ponder and Brainstorm, we know they're amazing. They get the consistency, but what they lose is access to soul lands, essentially, is the main thing. And you may think like, oh, well, obviously Ponder and Brainstorm are better, but I think the fact that Imperial and Shortcake are played more kind of is testament to actually soul lands are really, really busted as well. And when you can build your combo around it and like you make the mana work with Ancient Tomb, this card is still like, one of the top 10 cards in the format, probably. It's incredibly powerful. So yeah, also by like, you get to play fetch lands and stuff, but I don't know, there's something about these archetypes that for me just doesn't meld well together.
Yeah.
And it's not because I want to like play the all like clean artifact based things and stuff. I'm not against playing cantrips with Painter, but I don't know, like Painter is it's a low to the groundish combo, but not so much that you can afford all this cantripping time. So you then need to put a bunch of interaction in your deck to get you the time. So Imperial does play Lightning Bolt and stuff, and it does play the Pyroblasts, but all this stuff takes up slots, and part of the power of these Painter decks is they play a lot of tutors, so you do get these toolbox cards like Imperial Painter or Urza's Saga, and you only have so much deck building space. So I don't know, like with the cantrip ones and Uro and stuff, do you even play Saga? Probably not. And then you're having to put Grindstone in your deck, which is not great, and I don't know, it feels like trying to do too many things. Yeah. I've seen the blue-red versions playing Murktide, so that seems good because it doesn't matter if you put bad cards in your deck. You could just play a Murktide and force a will their removal and attack them. But like, I don't know. For me personally, they don't go together too well.
Yeah.
Saying that, there are like the Imperial or ish versions that are playing Once Upon a Time recently. Roger Sykes, shout out to him. He won the Buffalo Chicken Dip with Red Green Painter recently, and it's essentially for Once Upon a Time, which I don't know. Maybe we're all sleepy on this card, and I mean it's obviously great in the format, but I mean sleepy on it in Painter. He sang its praise and said it was amazing. So yeah, I think we should all try that a bit more. But interestingly, he wasn't even playing Veil of Summer. It was like just for Once Upon a Time. Veil is a cool card with Painter as well because you turn everything blue. But everyone was excited about that when it was around. But in hindsight, Pyroblast just does it better. Pyroblast is just better than Veil of Summer. So
yeah. But Veil of Summer is a card that you have to respect with naming a color with Painter, which is like basically a huge factor when Veil of Summer was around, that you can't really name blue or black again with Painter, because if they have the Veil, they can just Veil in response to the Grindstone activation. They are they get hexproof from black or blue, as you said it, with the Painter. And
we could talk about like which colors you should name and don't name for hours.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments of the Painter Discord was like for 2 days they were discussing like all the niche cases. It's like, so the main ones are like, you don't name black versus Snuff Out.
True.
You try not, now with all the pitch elementals, you try not to name the color that the opponent's deck is. So against D&T, naming white, or against like Moonstomp, naming red for Fury and Solitude.
Exactly.
And then, as you said, if they could have Veil Summer, you don't want to name blue or black. But then you are playing blasters in your deck. A very funny thing I've seen is, if you're playing against like another deck that has Pyroblasts, it's this guessing game of did they bring in their own Pyroblast game 2 in case you name blue. So I try to not name blue in game 2s and game 3s, but the most common thing is like game 2 you don't see them, and then if you name blue game 2, they will probably bring them in for game 3.
Yeah.
And this I named black recently on Magic Online just because I think black looks the coolest online.
Yeah.
And then I played against Enchantress, and then they played a Elephant Grass which says black creatures can't attack. So do not name black against Enchantress. There's so many things you could do. It's so funny.
Yeah, and something is like naming green against decks that are playing Endurance and stuff like that, which is
and Force of Vigor.
And Force of Vigor, yeah. They are, It's not that easy than I would say a few years ago to name a color with Painter, with a lot of free cards like the Force effects, basically, because previously only Force of Will was the only card that was playable. I mean, Contagion got...
The nice thing with Painter is when you name blue in your blue Cantropy versions, you can then pitch like lands to Force of Will. Yeah. But so can your opponent.
I was doing that so much back in the days when I was playing the 4-color Painter deck. Yeah. Excelling like a Flooded Strength.
Pitch Astrolabes.
Yeah. So good. Something that we talked about with blue cards aren't really able to abuse something like Urza Saga, and it's basically the same here in the blue-red versions and stuff like that, because you have the cantrips that you want to cast to find your combo pieces, but on the other hand you want to make tokens with the Urza Saga, and if you aren't playing Urza Saga, you are missing a crucial angle of attack in the deck. So it's kind of a really, really big trade-off to trade in consistency for speed and good cards. And it's kind of hard for me now to play something like the blue-red or the rug version, even though I'm a huge fan of playing blue decks, even though I'm now playing my own version of Painter now for basically I think a year now. It should be like the ban of Astrolab should be a year ago and stuff like that. So I'm really finding success kinda in playing cantrip oriented decks, which is a skill that you have to kinda obtain, I think, because if you switch from a blue deck to a non-blue deck, the keep or mulligan decision gets so much worse, because in a blue deck you have I have 2 lands, 2 cantrips, and some random cards I can keep the hand. If you're having a non-blue version of any deck, if you're, for example, like Imperial Painter, you have 2 lands, 2 cards, or 5 other cards. It really, really depends what the 5 other cards are, and even what the lands are, because if there is no color source in there, and you need some colored mana for like Goblin Welder, Goblin Engineer, and stuff like that, the hand isn't keepable either. So it's really, really hard.
It's definitely a big step away. I was also like a blue player for most of my legacy like playing career and stuff, and I think it was just a couple of years ago that I started to really step away. I used to like play Jund and Nickfit a lot at my local game store, but like I got into Esper Stoneblade as my first real deck and stuff, and then was playing Miracles when Miracles was good and all that kind of thing. So it definitely takes some getting used to. As you said, the opening hand thing is the hardest thing, and sometimes you just have to like, you know, embrace the variance with open arms. Like, you know, if you had a really good hand, be like, right, I need a colored source. You take these shots a lot with these kind of decks. Like you let yourself get lucky or unlucky, and then when you do, this is how your like really busted and strong hands come about sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Because you are still in the end an A+B combo deck without any cantrips, but with a lot of tutors. Some tutor that we haven't mentioned in detail about tutoring cards is printing of the previous Modern Horizon set, and this one is Goblin Engineer, which is a version of Welder, I would say, which is a 2 CMC version which tutors most of the time up an artifact, which is most of the time the second combo piece you need. Something like the Painter when you have the Grindstone, or the Grindstone when you have the Painter. And it can activate for 1 red mana, which is a really, really cost in that slot, because Welder is able to do it for free, which is like way better. I mean, doesn't
It is. You can say it. Welder is just insanely powerful. It always surprises me when I do stuff like, I've been playing a Bolus of Citadel in the deck recently, and you play like turn 1 Welder, turn 2 Engineer and search for it, and then you just use this little 1-drop to put a Citadel in play. It's like, wow, this card is great.
Yeah.
But the tutor ability of Engineer is so powerful.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I find the activation thing, like, it's hard to use a lot of the time.
Yeah.
If anyone's new to the deck and getting into it, like, you do use it, but it's the 1 mana is a real cost, and like having to sacrifice the artifact as part of the ability to then is also a pretty real cost, because the way Engineer works is, it says sacrifice an artifact, pay 1 red, and then you return something from graveyard to play. This really opens you up to something like Endurance, like putting your graveyard on the bottom of your library, or a Tormod's Crypt. The difference is Goblin Welder, you choose an artifact in play and an artifact in the graveyard, and then you basically switch them. It does count as a sacrifice technically, but if your graveyard and then the target of it is then gone when the ability tries to resolve, you don't have to sacrifice the thing in play.
Yeah.
Also, Welder targets your opponent's stuff. This is so good. It comes up not that often, but when you do it, it feels amazing. Like, I made top 4 at a paper event a couple of weeks ago, and in the semis I played against like a blue-white Delver player, and I ended up losing, got beaten pretty hardly, but one of the plays I got to do in game 2 to try and survive, I was like at 4 life, and I had like 1 land. I wasn't drawing lands, but I had a Welder in play, so I got to Pyrokinesis, an Esper Sentinel, and a Stoneforge Mystic, and then weld the Esper Sentinel back in against the Cauldron Complete.
Yeah.
Because he was just like, how are you going to beat this? Like, it's indestructible, you can't beat it. It's like, nah, I've got Welder. Welder does everything, man. It's cool.
Yeah.
But sorry, I'm getting distracted. Engineer, though, the entomb for an artifact is so powerful, because as you say, the extra pieces, and I found it like so powerful with sideboard options as well. So whenever I build my sideboards, there's usually some Khans, so you're building for Saga targets, for Khan, and for Engineer. So I very often have now these days 2 Torpor Orbs and 2 Tormod's Crypts in my sideboard, so I can sideboard 1 in and have 1 to Khan for. And then very often you're just like engineering for this Torpor Orb against D&T or Doomsday or whatever, and just like having it, threatening to have it online turn 2 with a turn 1 Welder, or turn 3 with just the Engineer itself, it's kind of switched the D&T matchup from horrific 90% they're favored to now 50-50, maybe more with Torpor Orb.
And something that we have to mention here is Torpor Orb doesn't stop Painter, because Painter has written on it not when Painter enters the battlefield, sondern as Painter enters the battlefield. So that means it does keep the color, or it is allowed to choose a color. And another huge thing is that it was way more relevant in the in the earlier times with Oko running around, that if Painter got elked, the cards are still blue or whatever color you chooses, because it's a different layer. I don't want to get
layers, man.
and
So it also works with dress down, which comes up quite a lot, right?
yeah, it's
So although it's important to know, if Painter is in play and then someone plays a dress down, everything will stay all the colors, or the color you name.
Yeah.
But if you play a Painter or try and weld one in, and then they play a dress down in response, you don't get to choose a color.
Yeah.
And so everything just stays normal. Layers, man. I still don't know how they work, but I just learned the interactions a little bit, maybe.
and specifically for Imperial Painter versions, it's the same for Magus of the Moon. So there it doesn't matter when the dress down comes into play, but yeah, everything is still a mountain.
Nice, just how we like it.
Yeah. So with talking about engineer and stuff like that, we are getting into the engine cards of Painter, which is the previously mentioned Goblin Welder and the Goblin Engineer, which is a core piece of, like, I would say 95% of the Painter decks. And
Yeah.
we have some outliers here, which are Emery Lurk of the Luck, which was basically a huge drive for the blue decks, which swang a little bit down, I would say. And Emery is still a format-defining card, I would say, with 8-cast variants, where it's a huge player.
Yeah.
It's a free drop.
Yeah, it's an absurd card.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. But the thing is, like, you look at it and you read it and you're like, okay, well, this is like a Goblin Welder. You can cast things. But actually, it plays incredibly differently.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to build your deck really around it. So you need to be more combo focused. Where Welder and Engineer are so good is because they beat removal on, like, at instant speed, essentially. So when you activate a Grindstone, you have a Painter in play, your opponent bolts the Painter, you can let it die, and then you just weld it back in with the Grindstone trigger still in the stack.
Yeah.
I cannot sing, like, Welder and Engineer's praises high enough, especially Welder. Like, I as I've gone along and I've learned the deck more and more, I find myself Imperial recruiting for Welder, like, more than 50% of the time, honestly. It is the little card that just makes the deck tick. I think without Welder, Painter would be in a weird place. Like, you'd have to be a stompy deck and stuff. It really lets you grind, lets you fight through removal, lets you just do so much. Like, sometimes you're playing against a control deck and you know they have, like, 2 swords, a force of vigor, like, all this stuff in hand, but you're threatening the combo, so it's like whoever blinks first, and then you just keep playing welders, and you play an Imperial Recruiter, get another welder, and then eventually you have, like, 4 of this effect in play and you outpower their removal spells.
Yeah.
It also saves things from being Swords to Plowshared or Prismatic Endinged and stuff, like, by sacrificing them. So Emery, though, because she's essentially a sorcery speed activation for all intents and purposes, so yeah, because she mills the graveyard as well, it's probably, like, could say it's a more powerful card sometimes. You don't need to sacrifice something in play, you just play these things out and stuff. So with the right build around, she's probably a little bit of a better card, but you do need to, really keep it in mind. You need to have another plan for all the removal spells, essentially, which is usually Chalice of the Void.
Yeah. The card is very, very different to play with. Something that came up when I was playing it was like, yeah, you kind of get cards back and stuff like that. But the problem for me was with my previous build that my cards didn't sacrifice itself. So the value was kind of prohibited because, my cards didn't go to the graveyard again. So you have to play something like a Chromatic Star and stuff like that you can purposefully put back into the graveyard that you can cast it again. And that is a very, very different playstyle of the card. And Goblin Weld and Engineer,
I think,
just different.
Yeah, they're just different, and I think it's a better, like, engine of the deck. It's a better approach. Like, these 2 cards together play so well together, and they just play so well with Painter and Grindstone, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to find a better match, and, like, the angles of play and the things they do, like, it's hard to really summarize without playing with or against them. They just do so much. But I think the blue or blue-white space is very underexplored. Emery's amazing. I think Oswald Fiddlebender is incredible as well. You mentioned Chromatic Star. I think, like, Chromatic Star is fantastic with Oswald as well. It's a nice cheap thing you can sacrifice and get a draw off it. Like, they're both legends. It's a bit of a downside because Caracas has kind of played a ton. So, that's a very real cost with Emery and Oswald. But there's a lot of good blue-white cards, and you get to play like Esper Sentinel as well, which is very good now.
Yeah.
Just like that card, you do need to have enough of a like either a clock or a threatening of the combo fast enough, right? So it's a card that drops off quite quick. I think you can't just like play it and then start playing some chromatic stars and then like generating value and value and value, because your opponent will make land drops and then eventually just pay the one each time. But yeah, I don't have a ton like of things to say right now, but blue-white, there's got to be some other kind of combo things. I think like Urza is also really good, and in blue-white you get Thopter Sword, which is very good to like Oswald into and stuff off the one drops. So there's probably some things there to look into.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned that Oswald. Oswald is just another pretty big card that came up in a recent set. It was in Dungeons and Dragons, and he just tutors up a card, puts it onto the battlefield for 1 mana and sacrificing an artifact and putting it something in with +1. I think you can't put an even mana cost, so you have to put.
Yeah. So
if you sacrifice a 1-drop, a 2-drop. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and 2 into 3. It's like a birthing pod, but it has to be exactly the one above. There is a mono white version of Painter, which is really abusing it nicely, which is cool. When I first read Oswald, I was very disappointed to see it was only sorcery speed, because I thought at the beginning you could like grindstone, activate it, whole priority, and then weld it into a Painter. But it's fair enough.
Yeah, I think
Oswald, there's tons more shells to find as well. Yeah, it's need more exploring.
I think if it would be at instant speed, it would be just way too good. That's the problem, I think.
Yeah, it's still a 2-mana 2/2 legend that needs a turn to get around.
That's true.
But yeah, it would be a massive upgrade. It would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And something that you mentioned, the mono white build, which was in the Discord a lot discussed, specifically after Thraben University basically went 5-0 with the list or something like that.
There's a guy called Eddie the Intern, I think, is the guy that's been made it first and pushing it.
Yeah, I think he sent the lists to how's it?
Oh, okay, to Phil.
To Phil, that he plays it, and the list is just really, really good, abusing some stuff like Enthusiast Smith, which is a mainstay modern now, which is
that card is fantastic.
Yeah.
And also, my surname's Smith, so people are saying I should call myself Ingenious Smith, but it's a bit arrogant. I don't know. But that card is great. I've been so impressed by it. Like, it grows to 4/4, 5/5 very fast without doing anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes it says look at the bottom 4 cards of your library, but hey, that's those effects.
Yeah, but at least it's still a thing that grows for 1 each turn.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And something like it does grow on the first turn most of the time. So you just play it for 2, then play an artifact land or another 1-drop in your deck and stuff like that, and you still have a 2/2. And the next turn you have a 3/3, and it's the 3rd turn of the card, but then it's bolt proof and stuff like that, and it still draws you a card most of the time.
It can also trigger on each turn. So if you have a Retrofit a Foundry in play, you can make like a token on your opponent's turn and grow it.
And Urza Saga too.
Yeah, as a saga, or like that deck plays Aether Vial, so you can file in an artifact creature.
Yeah,
there's things you can do to grow it pretty fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I wonder if Painter like other versions could play it, or I guess the artifact count has to be pretty high for it.
Yeah, the problem is the artifact count, because as we mentioned in the most of the decks, you are playing like 4 to 6 Pyroblast or Red Elemental Blast effects, so it's kind of a huge downside to play more. I
think you actually only play like 10 artifacts in Imperial, something like that.
Yeah, you play
4 Painted, 2 Grindstone, 4 Great Furnace, and then like 1 or 2 little tutor targets.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty low. I mean, on my Painter lists, because I'm playing Esper Sentinel, I'm way higher because I still want to use something like a Moxopal to have some explosive draws, even though I'm more on the fair side of the spectrum, I would say. But yeah, I think Ingenious Smith is a hard card to build around, even though it looks pretty easy, because a lot of the cards aren't artifacts in the deck. So yeah.
Yeah, good point.
But yeah. So the last engine card is Urza Saga. I think we have talked about the card a lot now. And yeah, it's just good. It's
I can't see myself playing a painted deck without it.
yeah.
For one of the showcase challenges 3-ish weeks ago, I registered a deck which had 4 main deck Blood Moons and more fast mana and 4 Soul Lands and no Sagas because Ragavan was still Ragavan had just been banned, so it wasn't like there to make treasures and stuff. And the Delver decks weren't playing any basic island, and the control decks were all, just like all jewels and nothing else. And so I thought, right, I think this deck is really good against the upper bracket of the format. So if I can get lucky the first few rounds, I'm going to Blood Moon these people. And obviously, I win the first round against a Reanimator and then lose to Blue Red Delver twice. So
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, the idea was there, but I think outside like specific medicals, I think you'll just see Saga in every painted deck essentially.
Yeah, it's just a way too good card. It's like for some meta games you skimp on playing Brainstorm because you are fearing Chalice of the Void. It's a hard saying, but I think it's comparable.
That's a really good way to put it. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna steal that. Yeah, not playing Brainstorm because you're going to Chalice. Yeah. All right, nice.
So yeah, we previously mentioned like problematic cards and matchups. I only put it there in the show notes like Show and Tell with Emrakul, which is, as we previously mentioned, solvable with Tormod Script or Soul Guide Lantern, or even something like the Nihil Spellbomb and stuff like that.
Yeah, this is a matchup where, like, the game plan going in, it does look bad on paper because you can't just combo them, and they're threatening a pretty scary combo as well. But this is where having an Ensnaring Bridge main deck really, really helps. So you're just racing. You're using every single resource you can get to get an Ensnaring Bridge in play. And once that's there, like, it depends on the build. Like, the Omnitel builds would just have a Cunning Wish for an Echoing Truth or something, or a Force of Vigor or whatever. But the straight blue-red versions are fairly cold to it, as far as I know. So once you get Ensnaring Bridge in play, and this is another thing where, like, the welders can, like, if you get an engineer to put the bridge in the graveyard, you're then just welding it in, so getting around counter magic. So they need to then counter the engineers, and yeah, you can usually get it in play. And then from there, it's like you need to win with Khan. So you need to be careful how many Khans you're playing and how much counter magic they're able to assemble. So you have the whole game essentially. So you just build up Pyroblasts and you can keep welding stuff to get value and stuff. But I don't know, you can also just activate Grindstone with the combo on them and see if they concede, because not every Show and Tell player realizes it does happen. But generally you just need to get an Ensnaring Bridge in play and then go from there. Khan, find a Tormod's Crypt. Or if you have a Soul Guide Lantern main deck, then it's much easier because you can get it from the Saga. Like, there's ways around it. I don't think it's too bad if you have an Ensnaring Bridge main deck. If you don't, it's probably horrific. Yeah.
Saga was a huge bump, I would say, for the matchup. Then we have another card that's kind of hard. I mean, not that hard, which is mostly from Elves, which is Progenitors, which is like, it puts itself back into the deck, which is like, most of the time they get another turn. But yeah, that's most of the time.
It's usually okay.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that they get another turn, but if you're comboing, it probably means that they haven't Kraytoothed you, or so you're not facing lethal. So you can probably just mill them out. They draw a Progenitors for their turn, and then they can't kill you. Yeah. Sometimes they have the Allosaurus Shepherd to pump their team. Like, so you sometimes you combo and then you do lose to that. It is what it is, but generally, if you get to activate Grindstone on them, you should be okay. Yeah. Like, the extra turn doesn't matter too much.
Yeah, something that is huge there is I really, really like my Lines of Diamond in the main deck, especially with playing Ensnaring Bridge, which can allow you to decrease at instant speed your hand size to 0, which is sometimes hard if you're playing Khans and stuff like that, because the 4-drops can stuck in hand, because if you don't draw the second soul land, you aren't getting up to 4 mana and aren't allowed to cast a Karn. But
that's a good point. Yeah.
But
LED does a lot for the deck. Yeah. I'm always 50-50 on whether to include it or not. And it's like fast combo and combo mirrors. Yeah. Or discarding your hand is such a good thing sometimes. Yeah.
The Lines of Diamond is a card that has niche cases, I would say, and isn't really required for the deck, but is sometimes kind of neat to have him in there somewhere, even if it's the one-off in the sideboard to get with Karn or any other places. And
absolutely.
Yeah. If you don't have the Lines of Diamond, you aren't really needed to buy them. I think you can still play the
No.
deck. Yeah.
I've had people ask that, and I play one in the sideboard to Khan for generally, but you can definitely play with that one. It's a nice thing. Like the deck isn't massively expensive. There's a couple of city traitors, but yeah. You do, like having access to one Lion's Eye Diamond is good, but you won't need more, and it's not necessary.
Yeah, I was really really lucky that I bought them before the spike. If it would be now, I wouldn't bought them. So
I sold 4 just before, I think. I'm definitely regretting it now, but here we are.
Yeah, it's the times. I mean, it doesn't matter which reserve this card you sold. All of them pretty much increased in price. Like I bought myself an Intuition for Painter because in my control deck I was playing like Intuition for Grindstone, Painter, and Divine Reclamation, which was also something that was kind of cool.
So nice.
And it spiked from 30 euros to 120, which is nice.
Yeah, all the reservists will spike.
Yeah.
So get a couple of cities quickly, and then I think the rest of the deck isn't reserve list. Apart from the LED as well.
I mean, the LED, the plateaus if you're playing Strawberry or another versions, but dual lands are always reserve listed. So.
True.
But the biggest cards like Urza Saga, Painter, Grindstone are not on the reserved list, even though Painter is getting a little bit more costly now, because I was playing German ones and I had to buy one for 40 euros now, which is
really I didn't realize they'd gone up.
I mean
they've always been like
the France versions, the Italian versions are at 20, but the German are really really expensive now.
Okay.
But I think we will get into the section of new printings for the deck, and the first one isn't really new. It's a card that's also from Modern Horizons 2, but I know, Callum, you really really like the card, and the card doesn't get recognized a lot, I would say, and it's Breyer's Apprentice, which is a free drop that, when it comes into play, creates a 1/1 Thopter token, and I think for 1 mana you can sacrifice an artifact and can exile the top card of your deck.
It's 0 mana.
For 0 mana. Okay.
Yeah, you just do it. Yeah.
Okay. You just sacrifice a card and exile the top card of your deck, and you can play it until the end of your next turn or this turn, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
The end of the next turn. I read that wrong. I was activating it and then not casting cards the next turn.
Yeah.
For a while.
Which is
you can also
Yeah,
and then the other ability is you can sacrifice an artifact to pump something, which I've had come up recently. Like you make Thopters, it makes a Thopter, and then you just like tap 2 Breyer's Apprentices and make it a 5 power Thopter.
Yeah.
I've had that come up weirdly. I'm not actually massive on this card, I'll say. It's a cool grindy engine thing. Like it's very nice with welders, and you can engineer for it and stuff. But for me, it's never performed very well.
Okay.
I love the look of it. It looks perfect. It's never played very well for me, weirdly.
So
are you into it?
So it's kind of a misconception of me, because I always see you just including the one of Breyer's Apprentice and being like one of the
I keep giving it a shot.
Yeah.
Like I think on paper it looks great. It does all these things that the deck wants. It can sacrifice random artifacts to draw cards. As you said in your other things, sometimes you really want to sacrifice artifacts to put in the graveyard for the welders. It makes 2 bodies. Colorless Thopters are really good at blocking Marit Lages and Murktide Regents and stuff. It does a lot of things, and it just looks great on paper. But then every time it's like, I don't know, 3 mana is a bunch. It just doesn't get there for me. So I'll keep trying it.
Yeah.
There was a version with 8 Soul Lands and Blood Suns that Marius Houseman made. I tried it a few times, but he played 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll keep trying. But...
Yeah, on paper this card is just so good, because not only does it grind on itself, but it's an artifact creature on itself. It comes into play, makes another artifact creature, and Goblin Welder can sack the token to bring something back, or can trade the Apprentice for another card in the graveyard. The next turn you just put it back again, have another Thopter token created. So you're just generating card advantage with like making multiple artifacts out of one artifact that you sacrifice with the Engineer or the Welder. Yeah.
The thing is, I've just found Ica Wellspring to do the same thing, but for a bit less mana, and it's harder to interact with, doesn't get swords or something.
Yeah.
I mean, you're okay. You're happy with that exchange, but I don't know. It's like it's a grindy card, but it costs mana, like more mana, and just I don't know. The deck grinds already pretty well, and it doesn't add quite enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, what's the Saga is just the grinders card that the deck has got.
Yeah, maybe it says a Saga, like because you have mana sinks already. You've got
Yeah.
Saga, you've got Imperial Recruiter, you've got Khans. Like the deck is mana hungry.
Yeah.
So
That's true. That's true. Then we have another card that's good at grinding, which is a new card now from how's the new card? Kamigawa Neon Edition or something like that. Neon Dynasty.
Yeah. I keep saying Destiny, keep saying it, but it's
Yeah, which is like the Ninja Turtle set that came out. And Experimental Synthesizer is kinda a 1-mana Eco Wellspring, but on the other hand, it is not. When it comes into play, it exiles the top card of your library, and you can cast it for this turn. And it does the same thing when it leaves the battlefield. So it's kinda a 2-for-1 on itself if you can sacrifice it for a target with Goblin Welder. I mean, it's a 3-for-1, especially if you get another artifact out of it. And it can sacrifice itself for 2 and a red to create the 2/2 Samurai creature token. And so it can make a body that does something. I mean, a 2/2 on the ground isn't really that impressive for Legacy standards, but it's still a creature, and if you activate it, you still get the card from the top of your deck. But the misconception is Eco Wellspring is definitely a true drop artifact. You drop it on turn 2, you draw a card, or you drop it on turn 1 with an Ancient Tomb, or most of the time an Ancient Tomb, because you don't want to play out your how's the other one card called? The
Great Furnace.
no,
Lands, or-
no, the land that taps for 2, the second soul land.
Oh yeah.
Because
City.
you have to sacrifice it if you play another land. And
Yeah.
that's a problem if you play it. But Eco Wellspring can be played on turn 1 and draws you a card. And this one is more turn 2, turn 3 play, because you want to play the card on top of your deck. And it says play and not cast, which means you can get the land off. But you still have to respect that you can excel a painter that you have to play then, or if you're playing Khans. And I don't think that this is a card that wants to go in a deck with Khan, because you just can't play the 4-drop of the synthesizer. And I think the card...
I very much agree, yeah.
I think the card will be played, but in a Welder-heavy archetype, which is basically really, really low to the ground, which ends at maximum 3 drops and stuff like that. But
Yeah, makes sense to me. I tried it a bunch last weekend without Khans, but with and no recruiters as well, but with Oswalds and some other stuff and twin shot snipers. So the curve was high, it had some things, bad hits and stuff, but you're right, it is a turn 2, turn 3. I think honestly it's like a more turn 3, turn 4 play, unless you're welding it in and not having to pay the mana. Like, I don't know, it just leads to weird play patterns where I think you're right. Like I'm just looking at it from the Imperial or Shortcake view, where you do have these more expensive cards, but you're playing a lot of reactive things like Pyroblasts or Lightning Bolts or stuff like that. Or you're playing these tutor targets from the Engineer or whatever. So I think you're right. If you're playing a build with more low to the ground, more artifacts, probably Mox Opals as well and stuff, and more just 0 and 1 mana things, it's pretty good there. Especially when you're running the 8 goblins and stuff. But I think we'll see it maybe there. But it's do those decks even want this more than a one of? And then if you're engineering for it, you might as well have Wellspring.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So
it's okay. It's a cool card. I think it's just if it had the until your next turn clause, then it'd be fine. But it's just when I was playing it, I'd play it turn 3 and not hit a land, and you'd hit a 2-drop, and then you'd play it, and that 2-drop would get dazed, and then it's you've spent your turn 3 playing an awkward turn for not much gain, and then you're being attacked back and stuff. It's I'm not sure.
It looks on the first sight really, really good, but if you think about it, really it's a hard card to play with and to build the deck with. And I, for my side, I think it would fit good into my shell, which is like the Esper Sentinel, low to the ground, playing 4 plateaus and stuff like that, not relying on Soul Lens. I think there it can have its space. I mean, it makes the Mox Opal way better in the deck. But yeah, it's kind of in there. I can play it as a turn 2 play because I have a lot of lands to play. I have a lot of 0-cost artifacts that I can hit, like the Lines of Diamond, the Mox Opal, the Lotus Petals and stuff like that. But if you are on a higher curve, like the Imperial versions or the Shortcake versions, with like 4 Imperial Recruiter, Khans and stuff like that, the Ensnaring Bridges, maybe even Trin Sphere or the fancy Bowler Citadel we see, you have a way too high curve that you are allowed to play a card that excels the top that you have to play this turn. Then you play just the Echo Wellspring. It puts the cards directly into your hand, and it's just way, way better.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I would just try and stop your curve at 2, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. And another card, which is, I think it's a common or an uncommon from, again, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. And it's Twin Shot Sniper, which is a 4-drop artifact creature. I think it's 4/2.
2/3.
It's a 2/3. Okay, completely butchered the stat line. But it deals 2 damage to.
Goblins aren't allowed to be good. Okay.
But it deals 2 damage to target creature, I think, or target.
Oh, it's any target.
To any target when it comes into play.
Yeah.
And it has channel for 1 in the red to discard from your hand, and does the same effect, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I told you to put this on because I think the card is great in Imperial.
Yeah.
Probably just as a 1-of, maybe 2. It's just great. Like, so the channel thing can't be counted apart from like Stifle or whatever. So you can like ping a Delver, you can ping a Collector Roof, you can ping a Dragon Rage Channeler before they have Delirium and stuff. You can like help finish off Planeswalkers, random Jaces, Narsets, Teferis and stuff. Like it's instant speed interaction to kill a Hull Breacher if they have a Teferi in play. Had that come up. It's just like, I see it as the channel. So it's a 2-mana shock, which can't be countered, fine. But it then discards itself. And so it's an artifact, so you can weld it back in. It's just a really nice thing to weld in. It gives you a lot of little plays. You can Recruiter for it because it's a 2/3, so it's got low enough power. Yeah, I think it'll just be a 1-of, but it's a very nice thing to have in the deck. And just, I think it's a good thing to randomly draw, and it's a fine thing to tutor for in these kind of matchups. Like, you're going to be playing against these random creatures that you need to kill as well. Just, it's going to be a 2-for-1 a lot of the time, so really nice little addition.
The only drawback on the card is that it's a 4-drop, which means that you can't weld it in with the Engineer. So
yeah, this could have been a 3-drop. It's really not that good. Come on, Wizards. It's really not that good, but hey, I wish it was 3, but here we are.
Yeah, it's still a really, really good card because, as you said, Imperialing it into your hand to then uncounterable shock any creature. It's just a really, really big thing.
Collector Roof is a card that really gives us a problem as well. So I've lost a lot of games against the kind of the Yorion Green Sun Zenith blue decks, which they like just Green Sun Zenith up the Collector Roof and then have like counter magic to protect it. Here, like they're probably not going to counter an Imperial Recruiter. They think, okay, well, I'll let them spend 3 mana. And then that's true. Yeah. And it's a goblin, so we can be more goblins.
That's true. But and another thing is that with Urza Saga running around, you can have something like a 5/5 token that you can attack with 2 of them, and they jump with a Murktide, and then you can basically channel the Murktide down and something like that. That is something that is not that unreasonable to happen.
That's true. Yeah.
So
No, definitely, it's one of these things. I can see that coming up.
Yeah. So I think we get to our 2 later or the 2 latest topics of the cast here, and we make a small keep or mull decision. I think we will make a small article for greatness@anycost.com to show you the list or make a link for the pictures and stuff like that, so that the listeners can see the cards too, because it's I think it's good to see it, that you can think about it more. I will say all the cards that you have in hand, and the situation. So yeah. So about the first starting hand, it's on the draw against an unknown opponent. You have it's this time it's for strawberry shortcake, so you can expect the Enlightened 2 to deck. You can expect the Ethos 1 Canonist, but yeah, as we already said, you don't have the cantrips to find the specific cards, so most of the time you have to work with the starting hand that you have. So let's talk now about the first starting hand we have. The first starting hand contains with Imperial Recruiter, City of Traitors, Lines of Diamonds, Painter Servant, a Wooded Foothills, a Goblin Welder, and a Pyroblast. So you are on the draw. Do you keep this hand or do you not?
Yeah, I would keep this pretty fast.
Yeah.
It's not like one of the best hands I've ever seen, but you have a couple of lands. Especially you want the Wooded Foothills to fetch for like a basic mountain, so at least you have your first land insulated from Wasteland. City of Traders is a soul land, obviously. You have turn 1 plays, you have like Wooded Foothills into mountain for a Goblin Welder probably. If you think you're against like a combo deck, you could try and leave up Pyroblast, but I think you usually just go Painter. You're actually pretty close to comboing as well. The moment you draw a Grindstone, as long as the Goblin Welder stays in play, you can use the Lion's Eye Diamond to like activate and discard a Grindstone or something. You can use the 3 mana to activate the Grindstone. Yeah, this is like very close to comboing, and then it also has, you know, a couple of lands and an Imperial Recruiter to play. If your first Painter Servant gets bolted, you have the Welder to like threaten more things. And also, like, it's turn 2, you can play the Painter off the city and have red up with the Pyroblast for other combo matchups. So I think it's a very good hand, really. Yeah,
I would think so too. As you said, the Grindstone enables a fast combo, something that you can still keep in mind. If you don't draw the Grindstone, you can still Imperial Recruiter for a Goblin Engineer to get you the Grindstone if you really, really need it. You have...
This almost threatens it, like, turn 2, because you can go turn 2 Imperial Recruiter with the trigger on the stack, sack Lion's Eye Diamond, go and get an Engineer.
Yeah.
But then you don't have an artifact in play. But yeah, it's doing a bunch of things. You have a bunch of plays open depending on the matchup, so I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So these are kind of the hands that you look for as a ground to middle level that you want to keep your hands with, I would say. So
yeah,
for the second hand, this is a completely different hand because you have an Ancient Tomb, you have 2 Lotus Petals, you have a Grindstone, a Goblin Welder, an Imperial Recruiter, and the Red Elemental Blast. It's on the play versus an unknown opponent, yeah.
This is so tough because you're kind of trying to combo pretty fast. But like you just lose so hard to Wasteland on that Ancient Tomb.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking if I'm keeping, like, what are you doing turn 1?
Yeah.
Do you play the Ancient Tomb and just play the Grindstone? Do you like play the Pedals? You probably play the Pedals out just to have a Red Elemental Blast if they're a quick show and tell deck or something. I think what you would do if you keep this hand is play Ancient Tomb, both Pedals out, and then use one of the Pedals to play Imperial Recruiter and get Painter's Servant.
Yeah.
Here, then you're looking at, like, you know, you've got an Ancient Tomb in play, you've got another Petal in play with a Red Elemental Blast, and then you have Goblin Welder and Grindstone and Painter's Servant in hand. You're still just losing so hard to Wasteland.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not actually sure here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'd keep it, but it's very close. I could definitely be wrong here.
Yeah. It's a really, really hard because it's the game is really, really different how you do the turn 1. If you play the Grindstone, if you play the Imperial Recruiter, as I said, I think Imperial Recruiter for Painter would also be my line if I had to keep the hand. But
I think I'd also play the Welder with the second Petal. Just only because you have the Grindstone as another artifact to put into play.
Yeah.
Like, and the Painter. Yeah, nothing's beating a Wasteland unless you just draw more lands, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would also I'd be looking to play out both the Recruiter and the Welder turn 1 probably.
Yeah. Yeah, would be another kind of good play. Yeah, it's really really dependent on the top of your deck or the shuffle top of your deck if you play the recruiter. But
that's a good way to put it, because like we were saying earlier, when you're not playing cantrip decks, you do accept that this is a kind of hand that has fast wins. So if you draw LED, you win next turn, right? So
I think
just
so, yeah.
plan for that. But I think now you say it like that, I think this is a keep, and you accept that there's some things you beat, some things you lose to.
Yeah. If we know the matchup, something like if we know that's against a slower deck, I think we can mulligan it. If it's against a fast deck, I think you are pretty in line to keep it because you're...
Yeah, like I wouldn't keep this against Delver, and I wouldn't be happy about keeping it against Control because the Lotus Petals are just very poor to be using for colored mana there.
Yeah.
And they also play Wasteland these days. But yeah, I think you keep it and hope that it either lines up well, the top of your deck is nice to you, or it's like a combo mirror.
Yeah. As we said, if this is against something like Reanimate and stuff like that, you just put out your pretty much whole hand on turn 1 and just hope that you draw a good card on turn 2 and win the game. So,
Yeah, by playing the Painter out turn 1 as well, you really insulate yourself against discard. It's actually good for you if you get discarded turn 1 if you play the Painter out.
Yeah.
Because your hand is just like... I guess you have the Red and the Metal Blast. They discard that, but yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So let's move on to the next Keeper Mal decision. This one is, again, on the draw versus an unknown opponent, which consists of a Bloodstained Mire, an Ancient Tomb, a Goblin Welder, a Lotus Petal, another Lotus Petal, and an Imperial Recruiter.
And the Painter, I think.
And the Painter,
you mentioning that. Yeah, cool. This hand is great. It's the kind of hand where you have plays. The Goblin Welder probably comes down first off a basic mountain in the blind.
Yeah.
You have the pedals to just like play around the daisies and stuff if you need to. I love starting with the basic land on turn 1 with these decks, unless it's like a combo thing. You have the Imperial Recruiter to play turn 2 around days as well if you want. For an Engineer, probably. That's what I'd usually get here. That's going to search for the Grindstone. And then going from there, you're looking at yourself with like a Welder and a Recruiter in play with an Engineer in hand and a Painter in hand. And from there, you should be able to find a win.
Yeah.
I just like these hands with multiple mana sources because, you get to do your plan.
Yeah.
And this deck is this hand is quite good against removal. You're threatening. They need 3 pieces of removal: 1 for the Welder, 2 for the Painter, and then whatever you search for the Recruiter.
Yeah.
So yeah, good hand.
Definitely. Because Imperial Recruiter just allows you to get basically every artifact in your deck. Because Imperial Recruiter for Goblin Engineer is just a nice combo there.
Yeah.
To get yourself.
You don't have any interaction, so like. I would love one of these Lotus Petals to be like a Pyroblast or a Lightning Bolt or anything that kind of just interacts with the opponent a little bit. But again, you have your own game plan to kind of try and kill them turn 3 or turn 4. So that's good.
Yeah, so they have to be fast as well. Now I have a pretty interesting hand. This hand is on the draw versus the Epic Storm. You have a Great Furnace and Arid Mesa. So 2 lands. You have 3 Lotus Petals, a Khan the Great Greater, and a Goblin Welder. Do you keep the hand or not?
Fastest keep of my life. Absolutely slam keep this. This is the ideal hand against the Epic Storm. There's nothing else. Like, okay, you could have 2 Khans and like a soul land, so you can guarantee a turn 1 Khan. But funnily enough, I just submitted a Through the Looking Glass for Painter versus the Epic Storm yesterday. And they said, like, how do you want to win the match? I was like, play a Khan. Like, yeah, just play a Khan. They can beat it. They sideboard in Chain of Vapors, and they can have some wins that aren't, like, using artifacts. But, yeah, this is just snap for me.
I mean, the Epic Storm specifically doesn't play any Chain of Vapors anymore. So it's a big plus. They are currently on Abrupt Decays. I thought so. Bryant came second in the challenge on the weekend, and he had 1 in the sideboard, I believe. Oh yeah, there is.
Yeah,
there's the one of
There was 1.
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know I can't remember if they're back on Thoughtseize, but like if they are, and your Khan gets thought seized, I mean, that's it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Your Khan got thought seized, but you're threatening to almost essentially win the game on turn 1. So if they turn 1 kill you, like you're not finding a better hand against a turn 1 kill.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. So yeah, keep it and hope that it works. I love it. I'll keep this.
Yeah.
And to be clear, obviously you play turn 1 Khan, not the Welder first.
Okay.
Just in case.
I wasn't sure what it would do.
But yeah, in that matchup, I am willing to mulligan down to 5 for either a Khan or like a turn 2 combo. I mulligan incredibly aggressively there.
Yeah, I think this is, as I said, you have to mulligan for, basically the good cards in the matchups. Because I'm playing the first one Canonist, if I don't have a turn 1 Goblin Engineer to 2-tap any of those or have it in hand, I'm probably not keeping it. I, for myself, are also playing 2 Deafening Silences in the sideboard. So, mulliganing pretty aggressively for those. And
you seem to have a great Storm matchup.
I mean, I'm not playing Khan in the matchup, so because
true,
because without any Soul Lens, I don't think that I'm allowed to bring in Khan, because I need
it makes sense.
The whole bunch of Painters, the whole bunch of Grindstones, just to be fast with the combo myself. If they get rid of the Deafening Silence or the first one Canonist,
makes sense to me.
Yeah. So the last Keeper Mal decision. This one is on the play versus Blue-Red Delver. You have an Ancient Tomb, a Plateau, a Grindstone, a Painter Servant, a Lotus Petal, a Pyroblast, and a Karn. Is this a keep or is it not?
So on first looking at it, it looks like a really good hand.
Yeah.
You have probably a turn 1 Painter. You have the combo in hand. You have a Pyroblast. You can play like a turn 1 Servant with Pedal up for Pyroblast. It's a keep, but it's not as good as I think first reactions will say. Again, like I just always have Wasteland on my mind. It's the thing with Wasteland is against like strong openers as well. They're going to be more inclined to fire them off if they feel like they need to get lucky as well. So Khan is also pretty bad against Delver, so I'm not super happy to have that in my opening hand. I generally sideboard them out, but here I think it's a keep. The hand is good. It's a very good hand actually. It's just one that you need to accept can go wrong.
Yeah.
And actually, I think I would value the Ancient Tomb higher than the Plateau given the hand because of the Lotus Pedal for the Pyroblast. So I would just go Plateau, Grindstone, and I would also not play the Pedal out for fear of Meltdown quickly.
Yeah.
So I just go Plateau, Grindstone and see what they do. And then next turn plan to like play Ancient Tomb, play Lotus Pedal, play the Painted Servant. Then you have a Pyroblast for a potential Meltdown up with the Lotus Pedal to pay for days. And then you're going into your next turn with like essentially an Ancient Tomb and Plateau and the Grindstone and the Painter. Depends on their interaction, obviously, but yeah, that's how I would approach this hand and be fairly happy with it. But I think it's just not quite as slam dunk good as it looks.
No, on first sight it looks really, really good, but the gameplay is quite hard on it because Daze is a really, really is a card that is really, really good versus this hand. A Wasteland just is really, really rough because basically starting on a mulligan to 6, and because the Karn isn't really castable in this hand versus this matchup. Yeah,
it's nice to like. So if they don't have a Wasteland hand, if they have like a force on your Painter kind of thing, and then Daze a little bit. If they're not wastelanding your lands, the Karn is legit. Like you could just draw another Soul Land and play it out. It's okay, but I think you're just. I do like the Lotus Pedal a lot to allow you to like play the Painter turn 2 with Pyroblast and with Daze up for like, again, I just always have Meltdown at the front of my mind and terrified of that. So you can Pyroblast it with the Lotus Pedal to pay for Daze. It's good.
Meltdown is a really, really big player now in the meta game. A shame that...
It's funny because it's so brutal against even Imperial and Shortcake, but as we said earlier, you only play like 10 to 12 artifacts, but it's just these are artifacts you play out and you play to the board and you play under counter magic and then they get to catch up by doing everything.
Yeah.
Another card you should be aware of is Hitsugu Consumes All. It's like 3 mana enchantment, black, red, and 1, and when it ETBs, you destroy all permanents with mana cost 1 or less.
Yeah.
I was playing 8-cast against that the other night, and it just destroyed me. So I think it's actually quite a good card in Legacy. So it's Meltdown-esque that we should be aware of.
Yeah, it basically clears your board for except Painter, Engineer, and the Imperial Recruiters that are running around. And a huge factor is the second phase, which is exile all graveyards, which is
so it goes such a pain for the lovely little welders. They use all their toys.
Yeah, and it's on the one side, Painter really relies on its graveyard, but on the other side, it does not really rely on the graveyard. It's a form of attack that it has, but if the access to graveyard is prohibited, it's not a slam dunk win for any deck. So if they start with a Leyline, it's kind of okayish. You still have the tools with a Pyroblast to clean it with a Painter Servant and stuff like that. But most of the time you don't need it because you have the Urza Saga to fetch up the Grindstone and can keep the Pyroblast to deal with any removal spells regarding the Painter.
Absolutely.
And I think we will come down to the last question. Callum, what are your favorite pimps for Painter?
So I'm not much of a pimp person. I love old frames, and so I'm not into foils. I used to be into Japanese cards, and then I've moved away. So for me, like actually, as you have in these screenshots, is like pretty much how my Painter deck looks. Like we've got these the Shadowmoor Painters, got the Ice Age Pyroblast, the Tempest Lotus Petals, the Tempest Ancient Tombs. I do have the old frame Goblin Engineers, so I'm all about just like old frame where possible, non-foil, everything that I can, like earliest printing essentially. So and it's the same for me for all decks. I just like old frames where possible and the oldest printing basically.
So we are pretty much the same. It's the same for me. I'm
excellent.
I'm playing only old frames. I try to play the oldest version of the cards. I try to be now.
I've got them next to me as well. My Blood Moons aren't the dark. This is really bad. I know. But I all the Ensnaring Bridges I have are Stronghold as well.
Yeah.
What mountains do you use? Or what basics do you use?
I use which edition is it? I have to search it up. I'm using Tempest basics altered by Kai Savatari with.
Oh yes, I saw them. They're awesome.
With basically Urza Saga fetch targets. One with and Retrofit the Foundry. I'm using a mountain with a painter on it, altered.
That's so cool. I might have to copy you. That's awesome.
And another mountain with the Grindstone altered on it to it. Which is
that's super cool.
Really nice. I'm using oldest version of printings. I'm now using the retro framed fetch lands from Modern Horizons 2.
I've got those as well. Nice.
And I have locally altered Ice Age Pyroblasts. I have beta Red Elemental Blasts, which I bought for cheap.
Those I don't have. I have. I think they're Spanish. I have. Red Elemental Blast. Oh, I don't know if you see here.
Yeah. Okay.
Black border though, and then these are the mountains I have for Imperial. They're the old Ice Age ones.
These are gorgeous. Yeah.
I love it. So I have so when Astrolabe was legal, I got 12 because I was like, obviously you need all snowlands, and then I have been using either Beta Basics or Mirage is like my favorite basics. I use Mirage for almost every single deck, but for Painter, I just love this old Ice Age mountain. So
that's cool.
I've got a bunch of them in Imperial.
And specific question: which Torment script do you use?
Okay, I have one nice one. Let me find. I don't know if it's here. I have one from the dark. And so I actually only play one in paper because I don't want to play any other ones. It's so bad. So I have one from the dark, and then the rest I have time-shifted ones. So old border as well from whatever the first time-shifted set was. I think I have 3 or 4 of them. So
I've got myself a Japanese. Was it Chronicles? It has the dark symbol on it because this is the black bordered, old bordered, and not time-shifted variant, and I think this is a really gorgeous. I'm using currently is it black bordered swords to plowshares, German ones, which I bought myself from a store in Vienna, 3for1.com. I cannot recommend them
Nice.
more. They have a lot of the pimp cards that legacy players want, and for cans I use specifically the version from the secret lair. It was the only secret lair that got my interest, and I using the cans from there.
Yeah, my cons are just the War of the Spark ones. I'm like 50-50 on, like, I like old borders, but I also just like first set printings.
Yeah.
So I'm always like unsure. So the engineers was an easy change to the old border, but for me, I'm like, so I traded for a card 2 weeks ago, which I am so happy with. It's just Goblin Settler. I'm showing you.
Yeah.
This card is terrible. 4-mana 1/1 when ETBs you destroy a land, but I traded for it and it's worth like £50. But I was just like, I love this card. I'm gonna get it, and I wouldn't play a black border version because it's white border from like a Portal starter set.
Okay.
I wouldn't play a promo over it. I would play I just love the first printing of things. So yeah.
Yeah, first printing is also something that I really, really enjoy, but I'm more the guy that just includes the old bordered ones or the black bordered ones if the old one isn't black bordered currently.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I was a really, really big sucker for white bordering cards, but
yeah.
I've got...
I'll be honest, I like for paper, because unless it's like a big tournament, I don't take it too seriously. I have 4 Ensnaring Bridges, but one of them is like white border, and 3 of them are strongholds. So whenever I'm playing a what's called lantern at my shop, I always play 3 bridges because I can't bring myself to put the ugly, the odd one out, the ugly duckling in.
I mean, I have 4 Blood Moons, and they are all different versions. So I have...
Oh, so you can't play Blood Moon. Sorry. It's just how it works. You're not allowed.
One of them is even French white bordered, so...
Oh God! Can I retract doing this whole podcast? Oh God!
We are too far in.
Yeah. It's like, I've got the recording.
Oh,
I will say
I don't have any blood moons.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I forgot to mention my Imperial Recruiters are the Masters ones.
Okay, yeah.
So I've forgotten what the set was actually called. Anniversary 25.
Yeah.
So I would like to have the other ones. This is where I would take white border just for the old thing.
Yeah.
I love the old art. They're just really expensive. So
Yeah,
that's
I was on the brink of buying them back in the days. Back in the days, it was like a year ago or something like that. But yeah,
I think I will upgrade them one day. But I actually really like this art on the new ones as well. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, the problem for me
Happy
was
with them, but,
that they printed it into Modern Horizons 2 and stuff like that, and it got legal for Modern, and the card spiked from €30 to 200 and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh shit! I didn't realize that. Okay.
But
yeah, one day I think Painter is one of these things where, like, as I said earlier in the podcast, I've always loved it and I've always wanted to like delve into the deck deeper. It's only been the last 2-ish years that I've gone like really into it. I had the cards before, but I think, you know, I'll just continue to play it for the rest of my life, and eventually I'll get the nice recruiters and nice blood moons and all these things.
yeah, it's the same for me. It's the first archetype that really hooked me. I even bought myself my first black bordered plateau now, again from 3for1, and
they're great.
It's just Painter is an archetype that you either really like or you don't. And with Painter coming around, I've dug myself really deep into permanent combo. I'm now trying something like Helm of Obedience and stuff like that, which is another mid-rangey, as I played mid-rangey A+B combo deck. But Painter is just deep in my heart. And
yeah, there's something about it. It's just, I love that it's just this little dorky scarecrow. Like, the cards are so likable as well. Like Painter Servant and Goblin Welder for me. Like, I don't know if I've hinted at it, but I'm a big fan of goblins as well.
Yeah.
It's another one of the decks that I have and play in paper when I can and stuff. So it's just like this. I love artifacts and I love goblins, and Painter is just this mashing together of all things I like. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's just a really good deck to play with, to learn, and it has so many niche cases that you can play. And if we really, really wanted to, we can make like a 10 episode series how to play Painter, how to play
Totally.
each turn cycle, and how do you use Welder there and there. And it's just a deck that you can really, really learn. Just as like Death and Texas and stuff like that. It's so many corner cases.
It has so much replayability, right?
Yeah.
So almost all games are different. Like sometimes you just have a turn 1 Ancient Tomb, Painter Servant, turn 2 another Ancient Tomb, Grindstone, Milieu. I've grown to really appreciate like these kind of free win games. Sometimes you get like to do well in Legacy, you do need to have these free win games where you just have a really good hand and you have yourself there. You can grind really well. Like before Uro, it happened more, but it still happens now where you play an Imperial Recruiter, get another Imperial Recruiter, to get another Imperial Recruiter, and you just attack your control opponents with like 1/1s, and then you have these Goblin Engineers and Welders lying around. And in the past, that was like a real win con against Miracles. You just have all these 1/1s and stuff, and you would just attack them down. Sometimes you're playing like a Khan control deck. Like I've enjoyed having Trinisphere in the deck sometimes, and so you play this Mana Denial kind of game. This is just talking about the red versions as well. So there's like fast combo blue versions. As you said, there's your versions, which are more mid-rangey. Like, what's cool about the deck is I've really encouraged some other people I've spoken to recently to get into it, because it's not something it's a combo that's always going to be here. It's never going to be too good. It's never going to it's already had things banned from it due to blue decks. So there's just so many ways of building it, so many ways of playing it. It's just deep. You learn so much about the format with it as well. There's some really weird interactions, like you say. You get very rewarded for like knowing how the stack works and all these, especially the welder tricks. Like the most common trick, just in case anyone doesn't know, is you activate Grindstone, hold priority, and then use a welder to weld out for a painter. Happens a lot. These little things that now, like for us painter players, is probably normal. I don't know, like these get people, and it's just very rewarding to keep practicing the deck, basically. Yeah,
for sure. It's just knowledge into a single deck, which can translate into multiple decks, and the same engine can learn your new archetypes. And I think that is something that is really, really valuable when you have something that you are used to, but are playing a different archetype now, and maybe you play without paint and now playing another deck and stuff like that, but you learned the concepts of the game with Painter, your toy that you used to love forever.
I mean, look, you play counter spells, you play Pyroblast, you play removal spells, you play Pyroblast, you play Land Destruction, you play Pyroblast. It's all the things.
It's really, really great. And I think we can stop the episode here. 1.5 an hour in. We talked about lots of Painter, lots of Grindstone, lots of different cards there. And so just to link your socials, where can we find you, Callum?
Good question. I always forget this when we do Everyday Eternal. It's at Callum Smith MTG on Twitter. And I always say that I sometimes stream, but I don't really. So mostly Twitter. I spend most of my work day just shit posting and stuff. So hit me up on Twitter. It's the main thing.
That's good. So you can...
Oh, also I do a podcast as well. Called Everyday Eternal. So go and check that out as well.
If you haven't known Callum, he's, as I said, Everyday Eternal podcast together with Julian. And a really, really good podcast. Listen to it. It was one of my first podcasts that brought me... I was listening to when playing Legacy,
Me too. It was the first one for me as well. So joining it was like, oh my God. No pressure.
So about this podcast or this podcast, you can find the In Response podcast at response_legacy on Twitter. Please leave a review on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever it happens. And you can find me. It's at Unicorn Lord. The O in the Lord is a 0 on Twitter and not on Instagram. We have to keep it. It's a running gag within the show. And In Response, the end.
This was In Response, a Legacy podcast. If you enjoyed the ride, feel free to support the show by following, leaving a review, or subscribe on patreon.com/response_legacy.